Hello bass players! In this video I'm going to start with the anatomy of the bass. You learn about all the different parts, what they are called, and what they're for. Let's get started. This is a bass. We're going to break it up into three sections: the body, the neck, and the headstock. This is the body, this chunk of wood right here. It provides us something to physically interact with and creates resonance that affects the sound produced by the instrument based on the shape of the body and the type of wood used. These, of course, are the strings, and I'll talk about strings more in a different lesson. This hunk of metal here that holds the strings is called the bridge, and these pieces of metal that the strings lay down on are called the saddles. There are some adjustments that can be made to the bridge and to the saddles, but you don't touch those unless you know more about what you're doing. I'll also talk more about that aspect in a different lesson. Next, we have the pickups. That's these two things here. Most basses have two pickups, but a lot of basses only have one. This bass just has one pickup. You can see the two rows of magnets there, but it's still considered just one pickup. If you do have two pickups, the one closest to the bridge is called the bridge pickup, and the other one is called the neck pickup because it's closest to the neck. The pickups simply sense the electromagnetic vibrations from the strings. They send that through the body, through the electronics inside the body, and then down to the jack, which is where you plug your bass in. This is where the sound eventually comes out and goes to the amp. To plug in your bass, you use what's called a 1/4-inch guitar cable. You plug that into the jack and plug the other end of the cable, which is exactly the same. Both sides of the cable are the same. You plug that into the amplifier. One side in the bass, one side in the amplifier. Your bass will also have at least one knob on it, and possibly many more. These knobs are to control the electronics that the sound runs through before it gets to the jack. This allows you to have some control over your sound. I'm going to go over the controls and what they do in much more detail also in a different lesson. These pieces of metal right here, you've got one on the top and one on the bottom. These are your strap posts. This is where the strap goes. You can use a strap if you're sitting down, but you don't have to. Personally, I don't. As you can see, I'm not using a strap on the bass right now. But if you are standing up to play, then obviously you'll need a strap. I highly recommend strap locks or a locking strap. Here's my locking strap. The strap post just goes through the center, and then you slide it over to lock it in, like so, and it's very secure once it's on there. This is your strap lock option, so not a locking strap, it's a regular strap, and I've installed strap locks on this. So the one strap lock goes on one side, and you need to put a new post on, so the post will go on the other side, and it's really easy to install. You just take out your existing strap post. It's just one screw. You just unscrew it. You put the new one on, and then you have two pieces that fit together. So I can just slide this on like that. There's two sides. So both sides are locked now. Secure. Good to go. Shouldn't fall off. Different strap locks work in different ways. I like these a lot. These are Shaler's. I think that's how you pronounce it. You just pull up on the little knob here. Pull up on that and slide it off, and we're good to go. So I recommend, again, getting either a set of strap locks to install on your bass and on your regular strap, or you can get a locking strap itself. The locking strap is really nice because it will go on any bass. You don't have to replace the strap posts on the bass. It works like a regular strap on any existing bass, but it locks to those existing strap posts. Your bass might have a pickguard. That's this white piece right here. This is just a piece of plastic on the front of the body. If your bass has a pickguard, you'll need to leave it there because it more than likely covers the electronics that are housed inside the body. If your bass doesn't have a pickguard, then there probably isn't one made for it. You either have a pickguard or you don't most of the time. The purpose of the pickguard is, I think, mostly tradition. Guitars have a pickguard to keep the pick from sort of scraping the guitar, but it's not really that necessary in my opinion. Even if you choose to play bass with a pick, I still don't think you need a pick guard. It's, like I said, mostly just used to house the electronics. This section of the bass, from here to here, is called the neck. The neck is usually bolted on. That's probably the most common. Sometimes it's glued on, and sometimes it's a single piece of wood that goes all the way through the body, called a neck through. You can see this bass is bolted on. You can see the bolts right there. So this is a bolt-on neck. This neck on this base is also bolted on. You can see the bolts right there. This is a guitar. This neck is actually glued on. You see there's no bolts, glued on neck. And this is a neck through. This is one single piece of wood that goes all the way through. You can see that as it goes down here. You can also see it a little bit easier on the back. One long, beautiful neck. This is considered the bottom of the neck, and this is considered the top of the neck because this is where we make our low notes, and this is where we make our high notes. Low note, high note. So we call this up, we call this down. And down here at the bottom of the neck, we have a piece that the string sits on. This is called the nut. We count or number the frets moving away from the nut. This is the first fret, this is the second fret, third fret, etc. I often will call the nut the 0 fret because it's one lower than the first fret. So that makes sense, doesn't it? When we play a string without any frets, so playing this string, not holding down any frets, we call that an open string. This sort of flat part of the neck here is called the fretboard, although it's not actually flat. It's very slightly curved, and the degree of this curvature is called the radius. That's not really that important, but just a fun fact. And if you don't have any frets at all, you're playing a fretless bass. That means that you don't have a fretboard. You have a fingerboard. So if you have frets, we call it a fretboard. If you're playing a fretless, we call it a fretboard. Fingerboard. Fingerboard. At specific locations on your fretboard or your fingerboard, there are fret markers. These things here. We also call them inlays if we're being very fancy about it. If we are not being fancy about it, we can call them dots. That's what I usually call them because they look like dots, right? Sometimes an instrument won't have inlays or dots or fret markers on the actual fretboard itself, but they should always have them here on the side of the neck. So you can see those little tiny dots there. Those should always mimic where your inlays are or would be. So every time you have a dot or an inlay or a fret marker here, you're going to have one here as well. The location of these dots are very standardized. So you'll almost always see them at 3, 5, 7, and 9. Sometimes you'll see them at 1, sometimes you won't see 3, but basically all of your odd numbers. Now we skip 11 and go right to 12, and at 12 we have a double dot. And again, you'll have that same thing mimicked here. I've got 3, 5, 7, 9, and I've got my double dot there at the 12th fret. I am very often asked, what's the meaning of the dots? Tell me the secret behind the dots. There's no musical meaning to these dots. They are just placed at given locations that is more or less standardized across every single bass you'll play so that you can recognize what fret you're on. It's as simple as that. However, the 12th fret, which is where we have our double dot, that 12th fret, that's the same note as your open string, 1 octave higher. So if this is an E, I hold down this. This is also an E, but a higher E. After the 12th fret, the dots mimic exactly what they do over here. Sort of like the 12th fret was the 0 fret starting over again. So 3 frets past that, you have a dot. 2 frets past that, right? Every other fret, so all of our odd frets past 12, gets a dot. And then again, we don't have one at the 23rd fret, so instead we wait till 24, and you see we get another double dot at 24. So if you have 24 fret bass, you'll have double dots at 24 and 12. If you don't have 24 frets, then you'll just see double dots at 12. And just like on the 12th fret, the 24th fret, the significance of the double dot there is that it is now 2 octaves higher from your open string. So I'm playing an open G, got a G higher than that, we've got a G higher than that. Finally, we have the truss rod, an adjustable piece of metal that runs through the entire length of the net. You can't see the truss rod, but believe me, it's there. You can see where it can be adjusted. Either at the top of the neck or at the bottom of the neck are the 2 typical locations. On this bass, you can see a little notch in the neck through right here. And that is where you would adjust the truss rod. The very last piece we are looking at today is called the headstock. That is the big chunk of wood at the very end of the neck above the nut. This also happens to be where the tuning takes place. If you need help with tuning, I will take you through that in our tuning lesson. These are machine heads or tuning heads. And this is also where the string is wrapped around. If you're doing a string change, this is where that takes place. And these are called the tuning pegs, and that's where we make our adjustments to get our instrument in tune. So that takes care of the anatomy of the bass. Like I said in the beginning, if you feel somewhat overwhelmed, just watch this lesson again. In the next lesson, we'll take a closer look at the knobs and controls on the instrument. We'll see exactly what they do and how to figure out what they do. I'll see you then.